When I flipped over the bedside table, I saw a lipstick that didn't belong to me. Looks like, not only do I need to change boyfriends, but also the bed. Went on a business trip with Sam and came back a day early. When I entered the house, I was still reading the messages from Calvin from the night before. He was so affectionate, saying he missed me. Quietly, I entered the house, planning to surprise him. However, I didn't expect to see a mess of clothes on the floor and a pair of unfamiliar high heels. Looks like I don't need to unpack and rearrange the luggage in my hands. There were sounds of joy coming from the bedroom. I stood at the bedroom door for a moment, then turned and went to the living room. In the liquor cabinet, there were the wines we picked together before, very strong. I poured half a glass. After finishing that half glass of wine, all my affection for Calvin was over. I checked the time and, dragging my luggage, I went out of the house to send a message to Calvin. Calvin, work ended early. I will be home in half an hour. Giving him half an hour should be enough time for him to clean up the house. After all, I didn't want the breakup scene to be too ugly. Across the street from the complex was a 24-hour convenience store. I bought coffee and sat by the window to warm my hands. 15 minutes later, I saw Calvin's car driving out of the complex's entrance. From a distance, the figure in the car didn't look like Calvin's. It seemed like that woman was driving away in his car. Half an hour later, I went back upstairs. The house had been cleaned up, and the air was filled with the scent of incense I usually used. Calvin hugged me, and he smelled like my familiar shower gel. Quite fast, he even took a shower. With a smile, not a trace of urgency as if caught red-handed, he said, "Susan, you're finally back. I missed you a lot." I pushed him away calmly and asked, "Did you intend to bring another woman to my house?" Calvin paused as he was about to hug me again. "Susan," he tried to explain, but there was no need. I took a step back, looked up at him, and said, "Tonight, I will stay in a hotel. You have the whole night to pack your things and leave, right?" Taking a step towards living together with Calvin actually took quite some time. I've been in the workplace for a long time, and it's rare for me to invest so much time in a man. Unfortunately, after being sincere, he got tired of it first. We met on the business table, had countless negotiations over a quote. Finally, on the day it was finalized, he said he wanted to have dinner with me alone. No business talk at the dinner table. The private conversation was also smooth, and after a while, I understood his hints. When I started out with Calvin, he was defined as a business partner first, then a boyfriend. However, considering my work intensity, he spent more time as a business partner. So he complained, feeling that I was not affectionate enough towards him. His way of wanting more affection from me was to live together. In fact, before agreeing to this proposal, I had been thinking for a long time. Given my work status, marriage and having children were not on the agenda, but if I could adapt early, it could work. Even my usually conservative best friend advised me to accept it properly and make a change. After all, I was not getting any younger. Calvin did a really good job in this matter. His tactful probing and appropriate intimacy made living with him very interesting to me. But now, it seems that his ease might just be from experience. I dragged my luggage out, and when I was checking in at the hotel near my house, I ran into Roger, my former boss. I was scolded by him when I left the company. It's been over 4 years. I remember how I vowed to make him see me differently, but now, dragging my luggage and checking into a hotel near my own home made me feel a bit embarrassed. He approached me, dressed in a suit, pretending to be human, but too bad. Even a wolf in sheep's clothing cannot hide its true nature. Susan, doing well, got kicked out like a dog. Being mistaken for kicked out by him is surely better than him knowing that my boyfriend was cheating on me, isn't it? I said. Roger, a qualified former boss, should be dead to me. Roger glanced at the ID and room card I held in my hand, raised an eyebrow, and emphasized to me, "I am your former boss, not your ex." I put away the room card, turned and left. "I'd rather be unlucky for 8 lifetimes than have you as a former boss." He actually took a step and stood in front of me. "I wish you the luck to have it soon. Thank you for not giving me and your family that luck." "Susan, you're getting feisty, huh?" Can't argue back. Our reunion conversation went on until he was tongue-tied. Roger had a sharp tongue, so sharp that it made you want to tear it out. Working in his company was actually my second job, and I already had some experience at the time, but when working on projects with him, I was scolded to the point of tears. It was common for the work not to go smoothly. Crying and venting a little bit of grievance would usually solve it. But at that time, in Roger's eyes, I was just a useless waste of space. A project could be scolded by him 7 or 8 times from start to finish. Fed up, I eventually resigned. But speaking of it, I really learned something from Roger in the end. Although he scolded me very often, he also taught me the most things. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to switch jobs so confidently and quickly. I owe my success today to him, in a way, thanks to his sharp tongue. Before, he was my boss and I dared not talk back. Now, it's better not to mess with me. Roger put his hands in his pockets, chuckled lightly. It's not that you can't argue back, but I'm afraid you'll start crying alone again later. Killing someone but leaving no trace. This man had the audacity to expose someone's shortcomings in public. Inhumane. Early the next morning, I dragged my luggage back into the house. Unexpectedly, Calvin was still there. His luggage was at the door, and he was sitting on the sofa in the living room. When he heard the door open, he turned to look, then stood up. His face showed hesitation and guilt. As I bent down to change my shoes, I asked him if he had something to say. Susan, he hesitated, and I added, if it's about reconciliation, there's no need to say it. He eventually bit his tongue. I went into the kitchen to drink water, and he followed me. He stood by the door and hesitated. Susan, I admit it was my fault, but living with you feels so good. I bet you feel the same way too, right? Are we supposed to overlook some immoral behavior for this rare compatibility we have? I turned around, looked at him and continued. Are you going to suggest I seek some excitement as well? Calvin said nothing. He acquiesced. What a bright way to win someone back. I put down my cup, put on a pretense of hesitation before speaking. How about introducing me to some of your good buddies? I walked past him towards the door. He gritted his teeth behind me. Susan, no matter how casual he acts, he won't be able to hide the fact that he's being cuckolded by his buddies. I agreed with him and stopped, turning back. Calvin, can we at least save some face for everyone? After all, we still have to meet at the conference table in the future. I couldn't change the fact that we were partners. As long as I was still working for my current boss, there was no way to completely sever ties with Calvin. Of course, it was only limited to a working relationship. My words were confirmed the next day. Because the project I was handling suddenly got stolen by someone. We needed to have an emergency meeting. Calvin rushed in before the meeting, not even bothering to button up his shirt collar. This was quite unusual compared to his usual style. My boss even joked around a bit, hinting if we had gotten tired of each other already. My boss was still unaware that it was over between us. Naturally, Calvin was reluctant to admit it, as it would tarnish his image. He's quite concerned about his image. Throughout the meeting, Calvin and I discussed work, and he even avoided trying to bring up personal matters, which my boss finally noticed. After discussing the response plan, I planned to leave the meeting room first, but Calvin stopped me in front of my boss. Sam, can I borrow Susan for a few minutes? Calvin sat at the table, acting casual. Sam, who we usually called Old Sam, because he seemed a bit strict, understood, nodded, and left first. I stood across from Calvin, holding the documents, looking at him, and decided to take the initiative. Calvin, I don't want to discuss personal matters during work hours. He took a step back. What about after work then? Except for our relationship. He sighed, stood up, and walked toward me. Susan, are we really breaking up? I asked. What else? Should we become enemies? He reached out and grabbed my arms, forcefully turning me to face him. I don't believe you have no feelings for me. Quite confident, I asked him, did you think about our feelings when you were sleeping with other women behind my back? He lowered his gaze, sighed lightly again, and was about to speak when the knocking interrupted us at the door. Knock knock knock. 3 taps, with a sense of teasing. I turned around, and the man leaning casually against the door was saying, so, it's not just about being kicked out. Even your feelings are not going smoothly, huh? I gritted my teeth, clenched my fists. I wanted to rip that Roger's annoying mouth apart. Yes, the man standing by the door watching the show was indeed Roger, the one who took our company's project. As a party involved in the incident, I was puzzled why he showed up at our company. Calvin, noticing an outsider present, let go of me on his own initiative. Thinking Roger came to see my client, he coughed lightly and left first. I asked Roger as I packed up the documents, do you live by the seaside, Roger? He raised an eyebrow. Huh. I picked up my things and walked out, saying as I passed him, mind your own business. He chuckled lightly. His sarcasm seemed to have improved a lot. Have you been practicing hard these years? He seemed to be in a good mood. Right, I said, I'm more than capable of dealing with you. He hit me with a critical blow. Do you know how that project slipped away from your hands? I stopped in my tracks. He continued, Susan, how many years have you been in this industry? Have you no vigilance at all? I looked at him. His smiling eyes turned serious as he spoke sternly. With such limited abilities, What projects have you been doing these 4 years? Have you been using your brain? Is it working well? All you do all day is talk about love and relationships. I was a bit puzzled by his words. His rhythm instantly reminded me of the time 4 years ago, when I was running around with him. At that time, his company was on the rise, and every project he personally supervised, following up rigorously to prevent any mistakes that might cause the project to fail. He was meticulous, busy to the point of being frantic, and easily irritable. He would always ask me, "Susan, when will you use your brain?" He once said to me, "Susan, you'll just get stepped on if you go out like this." The last time he asked me, "Susan, do you still want to work in this industry?" Now, hearing him criticize me like this again, the grievances I had suffered in front of him in the past suddenly surged up. Cursing seemed to be the only way to vent my anger. I said, "Roger, you bastard." He nodded, then looked into my eyes. "Don't cry, hold it in." I wasn't going to shed tears over a few words from him. I asked him irritably, "What are you here for?" He said, "To talk to your boss about something. Can you show me the way?" "I don't have time." I walked past him directly. Back in the office, I kept trying to guess Roger's purpose for coming. An hour later, I received a message from Sam saying he wanted to collaborate with Roger on this project. I guessed Sam informed me so I could take over, so I refused first. Sam was easygoing and rarely forced anyone. I turned to other projects. When it was time to leave work, Calvin's car was parked downstairs at my place. I thought it was Calvin, but to my surprise, Rena came down instead. She's Sam's, his little mistress. I was utterly bewildered, and I started to feel disgusted with Calvin. She works at the bank, and everything in our company related to the bank was coordinated through her. It was obvious to everyone in the company about the relationship between her and Sam. Unfortunately, I had a bit of a history with her. My best friend is also a client manager. One day when she came to my company, she casually mentioned that she wanted me to help introduce some business. Unfortunately, Rena overheard it. She pretended to smile, but immediately went to complain about me to Sam, saying that I was targeting her and trying to steal project commissions. Luckily, Sam could distinguish the truth. He just mentioned it to me briefly, because I work hard for him, and in this day and age, bosses always need people who work hard for them. Rena blocked my path. Despite the cold weather, she was wearing a super short skirt with black stockings, looking quite sexy. She looked at me disdainfully and asked if I wanted to steal her clients, implying I lacked the skills. I glanced at my car and didn't see Calvin. I smiled and said, "I should have advised Sam to replace you." She probably successfully snatched Calvin from me and wanted to show off, so she brought up Calvin in our conversation. She had a smile on her face and asked if I recognized the car. I retorted, "You're not afraid I'll tell Sam about you too?" She seemed unperturbed and even said I had an affair with Sam. She hit the nail on the head, and without evidence, it's hard to argue. Like her and Calvin, she could have just hitched a ride coincidentally. I nodded and said, "I believe you. Then congratulations on getting more clients." With that, I walked away, but to my surprise, she followed me. Standing beside me, she asked, "Are you really with Sam? If not, why is Sam so good to you?" I pressed the elevator button, and Rena seemed to think highly of me, saying if she had my time, she would have climbed higher in the company. When the elevator arrived, she actually wanted to come in with me. I blocked the entrance, asking her warily, "What do you want?" She sweetly smiled and said she needed to pick up something. Her lipstick she left at my place last time. It turns out Calvin didn't bring her over. She came on her own. The mistress came to my doorstep, and it wasn't a pleasant experience. I stepped into the elevator and pointed at her, warning, "Rena, if you dare to come in, I will dare to hit you." I wasn't going to play fair. She was a bit scared and called me a shrew as the elevator doors closed. I retorted, "Better than being a slut like you." After getting out of the elevator, I immediately called Calvin. His voice was soft, "Susan," but I cursed at him directly. "Calvin, the person you brought to my house the other day was Rena. Do you not feel disgusted when you see Sam? Aren't you sickened?" I didn't intend to tell Sam about this matter. After all, whether Sam and Rena were genuine was something I couldn't prove. But with Calvin, at this point, I didn't care about saving face anymore. Calvin sounded a bit anxious on the phone, asking if Rena had told me. I hung up on him directly. Once inside my house, I searched through things and finally found a lipstick that didn't belong to me in the nightstand. Calvin knocked on my door that night. I blocked the door and didn't let him in. Frowning, he asked if we could talk. I asked, "Talk about what?" "Give me a chance. Listen to me for a few words." "Are you afraid I'll tell Sam?" His silence showed he cared about the situation. I chuckled and asked, "So you hurried over here just to prevent me from telling Sam? You indeed are a businessman." Adjusting his tie, he seemed agitated, saying, Do you think I'm that kind of person? I nodded, and his brows furrowed even deeper. He then said, she's just after money. Did he mean he had money so he could afford to play around? I wanted to close the door, but he reached out and stopped me, saying, Susan, I am serious about you. I understood what Calvin meant. He was serious about me and thought I was suitable for a life partner. But that didn't stop him from fooling around with other women. Calvin, stop talking. The more you speak, the more disgusted I become, I said. Despite my efforts, he was stronger and eventually pushed the door open. I stumbled backward, but he caught me in time. Pushing him off, I stood back. At that moment, my phone rang. It was Roger. Annoyed, I thought he must want to be scolded when he called me at such a time. He chuckled, still angry. I snapped, just get to the point. He chuckled, come down. I'm downstairs at your place. I curtly told him not to come down and hung up. Calvin had walked over, saying my name. Suddenly, it clicked in my mind. Did Roger just say he was downstairs? I pushed past Calvin to leave, saying, if you don't leave, I will. I have things to do, not here to entertain you. Outside, I immediately called Roger back. Roger, wait for me, I'm coming down. His car was parked at the entrance. The window was halfway down, and I could see his head, that irritating head. Calvin followed me and stopped when he saw me getting into Roger's car. Roger turned to tease me. Are you willing to keep a man who straddles two boats? He was really too cheeky. I explained, aren't you supposed to work with Sam? He's a partner in our company. Roger nodded nonchalantly and said, oh, is that so? I should get to know him then. I was amazed, but he swiftly got out of the car. Calvin, with a hint of anger, stepped back as Roger got out. Roger casually introduced himself and even extended his hand to Calvin, saying, nice to work with you in the future. Calvin hesitated and glanced at me before asking Roger how to address him. Roger chuckled, then added, Susan's ex, the boss. Interruption from a god. His pause startled me, making my heart race inexplicably. Is this guy crazy? Calvin turned pale too. Roger got back in the car, nodded at Calvin before leaving. Inside the car, I asked Roger why he had come to see me. He grinned and asked, ready to make peace with me or not? But all I wanted was to argue with him right now. Seriously, I was so filled with anger and had nowhere to vent. Oh, really? Where's your sincerity to make peace? He said, I'm taking you somewhere. Unexpectedly, Roger took me to a stadium with all the equipment ready. I was a bit puzzled. Was this deliberate on his part? He knew I didn't have many interests, but I used to love playing badminton, although I stopped due to work and not having enough people to play with. One time during a company team building event, I played with him. After the game, he complimented me for the first time. Project didn't go so well, but you played a good game. Almost couldn't keep up with you. But somehow, it didn't sound like much of a compliment. Don't you have all this pent-up anger with nowhere to release it? Roger's voice interrupted my thoughts as I subconsciously took the racket he tossed me. I asked him, how do you know that? As we walked towards the court, he maintained a neutral expression, speaking curtly. I tried the new racket, saying, can't match you. It's like you're on fire all the time. He set down his belongings and started to take off his jacket. He asked, do you see me wasting words like this with anyone else? What's that supposed to mean? Is he scolding me or giving me special treatment? Seeing my silent response, he sighed quietly while stretching his muscles. I wonder what's going on in your mind all day. Bending down to stretch, I leaned in to look at him, then asked after a while, Roger, what's on your mind all day long? His gaze paused for a moment, meeting mine for a few seconds before straightening up and turning away. Work. Switching to the other side, still observing him, I inquired, Roger, with all your hard work, you must be worth over $1 billion now, right? He composed himself, looking serious. Confidence, cut out the nonsense. I was a bit stunned by his response. I knew Roger had built his business from scratch. Unlike others with backgrounds or family wealth, he was a self-made man. We were from the same hometown. I was secretly pleased when I first found out, hoping that being from the same place as the boss would at least earn me some favor. But it turned out he only picked on me all the time. I clapped my hands sarcastically. His face showed a hint of pride, holding back a smile. No need for compliments. You've had your share. She was referring to my time at the company when it was a critical period, and we all went through it together. Seeing that hint of a smile on his face made me particularly unhappy. I said, stop smiling. I'll make you cry later. I ended up eating my words once again. Roger's skills on the court had improved even more than before, while I had regressed by more than a bit. After the game, as we sat on a bench catching our breath, the frustration in my heart evaporated along with the sweat. Calvin and I had broken up. He could date whoever he wanted, just not me. That's what I thought after playing with Roger, but reality didn't go as planned. Sam found out about Rena and Calvin. Sam broke up with her and immediately terminated all partnerships with their bank. She turned to me again, coming to my office in a dramatic fashion. She accused me of being a malicious informer. Sam happened to overhear Rena's accusations against me. He couldn't believe it and asked, "Susan, you knew about this early." I had found out, just a few days earlier than him, but I had no intention of telling him at the time. I had no defense. Sam was disappointed in me. He felt I wasn't loyal to him and might have done things detrimental to the company because of my relationship with Calvin. With this incident, their partnership became unsustainable. Not long after, they were no longer business partners, and things couldn't go back to the way they were between Sam and me. Roger invited me to play again. During a break, we talked about this, and he advised me not to be emotional, ensuring that my work was error-free. Don't make yourself an easy target for others. Do you think every boss is like you? He chuckled and asked, "How am I?" I said, "Smooth talker." Raising an eyebrow, he looked intrigued, questioning, "What do you mean?" "You always have a way with words," I replied. After a few days, a new colleague joined the company. Sam personally introduced them to various departments. I guessed that Sam intended to take away some of my responsibilities. Understanding his gesture, given his years of fairness to me, I voluntarily resigned. My decision surprised Sam. He tried to persuade me to stay, but I still decided to leave. If the boss doesn't trust you, there's no point in staying, I told myself. Back at the office, I received a message from Roger, asking me to play again. It seemed he was quite free recently. I told him I had plans that evening, couldn't make it. He pressed, "What plans?" "I have to set up a bed," I replied. I had ordered a custom bed online, not expecting it to be delivered until now. I needed to change the bed. Just changing the sheets and covers wouldn't remove the shadows in my heart. That night, when I got home and prepared to tackle the bed, Roger showed up uninvited. He glanced around the living room at the large items and asked, "Are you sure you can handle this alone?" I was rummaging in the cabinet for a pair of scissors to unpack, uncertain before, but now I was sure. Roger looked at me, unbuttoning his suit, taking it off while rolling up his shirt sleeves. He took the scissors from my hand and got to work. Sitting at the table, I watched him. I remembered how he used to be commanding and reprimand me, a far cry from his current self. I had the urge to kick him right then. Turning to me, he seemed a bit helpless. "Susan, are you planning to just watch?" Quickly retracting my urge to kick him, I offered, "Should I pour you a glass of water? Come help out, things are about to fall." I walked up to him, reached out to hold the frame. "You came over to help by yourself. I didn't ask you to," I said. He replied, "Yeah, I'm at loose ends." I tilted my head and stared at him. He must have seen it from the corner of his eye, glanced at me, and asked where I was planning to go after resigning. Is he planting a spy in our company? How did he find out so quickly? Before leaving, Roger even took a tour of my house. Come to think of it, there is a bit of history between this house and him. At that time, I had been eyeing the houses in this neighborhood for a while, but didn't manage to grab one after the lottery. Feeling down for several days, I went to the real estate agency to look for a second-hand house in this neighborhood. After 2 days, the agency actually showed me the type of house I had been dreaming of, and it turned out to be Roger's house. I immediately said I didn't want it, but Roger said he could lower the price, and he did so significantly. I was tempted, and on the day he was processing the formalities, he took me out for dinner, saying it was to celebrate the successful project. My project was not even completed yet, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was just an excuse. The boss always loves to scold you before giving you a treat. I guess Roger scolded me too much, felt guilty, and did this. Later, I realized that success is not just about luck. Take Roger, for example. He worked hard and was dedicated. Now that he has achieved success, he seems carefree, but back then, he was always stressed out, busy, and frowning. When he scolded me, he would also impart some profound truths. For example, "Susan, rely on yourself, not others." He also said, "Susan, if it was somewhere else and I was talking about you, would it be as simple as just talking?" At that time, I made up my mind to leave, and there was another reason. I had a misunderstanding with a colleague, and being young and impulsive, Roger directly criticized me in front of many colleagues. So I quit in anger. Looking back now, Roger's expression at that moment seemed disappointed and restrained. Roger put down his cup and started adjusting his shirt cuffs. "Roger, you've been acting weird lately," I said. He asked as he buttoned his shirt. "How so?" I replied, "After not contacting me for so long, why suddenly act like we're close?" Glancing at me, he picked up his coat and walked towards the door, chuckling. Haven't you been busy dating others these years? I still have some basic morals. It sounded like another dig at me. Before completing the resignation formalities, I needed to hand over for a few days. I was right before, because Sam asked me to hand over to the new colleague. The handover process went smoothly, as she had also handled many major projects. Of course, that was until Rena showed up. At first, I was just watching for the drama, as it escalated to involve Sam's original partner. Now the two women in Sam's office were arguing non-stop. The new colleague, sensing the tension, gave me a knowing look. Unspoken understanding. To everyone's surprise, the argument escalated to my office. Pointing at me, Rena said, "It's her. I have nothing to do with her at all. You've got the wrong person. Sam and she have something going on. Everyone in this company knows. Go and check. How much money does Sam give her at the end of each year? Was she trying to clear her name by dragging me down with her?" The moment Rena said this, Sam's wife got fired up and demanded to know if I was seducing her husband, insisting on checking the financials and bank statements. I resisted. Sam, furious, intervened and, seeing that it was getting out of hand, slapped Rena and told her to leave. Taking the opportunity, Rena left immediately. Sam was angry, and his wife dared not start a fight anymore. Someone appeared behind me, grabbing my arm. I turned around and surprisingly, it was Calvin. He said to Sam's wife, "Susan is my girlfriend, and has nothing to do with Sam apart from being his employee." He didn't even acknowledge Sam, and just walked away with me. He had completely fallen out with Sam. I pulled my arm out of Calvin's grip. He stopped in his tracks. I glanced at the position where he was standing, next to a new car. Following my gaze, he took out the keys, unlocked the car, and said, "I got you a new car, because I didn't want you to feel uncomfortable seeing the old one." Did Rena use it? Opening the passenger side door, he asked in a soft tone, "It's been so many days. Are you not as angry anymore?" His ability to ask such a question meant he didn't think he had done anything wrong. I said, "Actually, I'm not angry at all." I wondered if he didn't catch on to my sarcasm, as he sighed in relief and embraced me, saying, "Susan, this car is for you. A gift as an apology. I've cut ties with Rena." Calvin's generous gesture demonstrated his sincerity. He had broken up with Rena, which explained why she hated me even more. Pushing him away, I said, "Calvin, in my book, there's only once or never for cheating. Maybe it's time for you to change your perspective." He believed that he could solve all problems, including emotional ones, with money. Pausing for 2 seconds, he frowned and said, "Susan, you should adjust your mindset, or life will be exhausting for you." It seemed that Calvin and I would never see eye to eye on relationships. I wondered how we managed each day in the past. He wanted to change my views, but wasn't willing to change himself. His sincerity could easily be bought with money. I said, "I'm not tired at all without you by my side." He sighed, losing his patience, and said with a more serious tone, "Susan, haven't I apologized to you multiple times in a humble manner? There should be a limit to your anger. Take the gift, and let's put this behind us. I promise not to make the same mistake again. Deal?" I turned around and walked away. I couldn't believe he had the nerve to act like a boss with me. He grabbed my arm again. Fed up, I exposed him. "Calvin, why were you so timely today?" I asked. He fell silent. I answered for him, "Because you knew Rena would come after me." Being exposed by me, he finally toned down his attitude. Rena must have complained to him about me, and he broke up with Rena knowing she'd come to bother me. Rena's move was quite brilliant. Nobody came out unscathed. Even Sam got caught in her retaliation. I pushed him away and was about to leave, but then I saw Roger by his car, clearly watching for a while. The three of us made eye contact. Can't act like we didn't see each other. Roger locked his car and walked towards me, no longer casual like when he met Calvin. He asked, "Did we disturb you guys?" I said, "No." Calvin said, "Yes," and instantly sounded like a couple having a petty argument. Roger's expression darkened visibly. He spoke coldly, "I'm here to find Sam." I quickly jumped in. "Sam's busy today. He's got things to do." Roger turned to me, his tone serious. "Then how about I find you?" I eagerly replied, "Sure." Calvin chimed in, "No way." Roger's face turned completely dark. Probably didn't want to hear Calvin and me banter. Roger turned around, "Well, what a coincidence. I'll leave first." I followed him with the urge to curse him out as he walked away. Calvin grabbed me, opened the car door, trying to get me inside. He whispered in my ear, "Susan, don't make a scene. I made reservations at a restaurant. Come have dinner with me tonight. I struggled. Calvin, I'm not going. Let go. Calvin pushed me into the car, about to close the door, when someone suddenly blocked it. I looked up. It was Roger. His face dark, he said to Calvin, Calvin, no need to be forceful, right? I pushed the car door open and got out. I confronted Roger loudly. Roger, are you blind? Roger looked puzzled. Calvin frowned, looking at me too. I pushed past Roger and walked away, not sure why I was mad at him. I resigned from work and it was almost the end of the year. A good opportunity to spend a few more days in my hometown. My parents were thrilled to know I was coming back. They were planning to visit me this year, but now they were driving to the station to welcome me back, adding some joy to the occasion. Home-cooked meals without office politics helped me relax. I quietly told my dad about quitting, while my mom, being sentimental, worried I wasn't doing well on my own. My dad supported my decision, seeing it as a chance for me to stay home longer. On New Year's Eve, I received a message from Calvin. Happy New Year. I thanked him, exchanging pleasantries. Then he asked, are you sure you don't want to reconsider? I didn't reply, and he didn't press further. My mom called me in for dinner, and as I entered, the spread on the table pleased my dad. He praised my mom, making her really happy. But her matchmaking talks were inevitable. She had already arranged blind dates for me every day. My dad stood by me on this matter, so I had to get up early and go on these blind dates. While grumbling about early morning dates, I saw Roger at the designated seat. I froze in my steps. We were from the same hometown, but did we have to live this close? We hadn't been in touch since our last argument. He stood up as he saw me, feeling a bit awkward inside. I tried to explain, Roger, I didn't know it was you. He interrupted, it's okay, I knew. Did he mean he knew it was me? I sat down opposite him, feeling bewildered. Roger, are you really? I pointed at myself, testing the waters. He finally smiled a bit. I doubted his intentions. If he really liked me, why had he treated me like a dog before? His smile gave me goosebumps. I got it. I spoke again. I see. Roger, are you deliberately meeting me to get back at me for scolding you? Afraid I wouldn't come if you invited me out alone. He opened the menu, asking me, Susan, think with your brain. When have I criticized you incorrectly before? He was right. I had been careless before, but I couldn't admit it in front of him. I retorted, so, should I be grateful to you? He replied, no need, just remember it. Wasn't he giving me face? He turned the menu towards me, asking, how about these dishes? Glancing at his smug face, I felt quite unequal. I'm not hungry. Just seeing you satisfies me. Ignoring me completely, he suggested, how about some shrimp dumplings? Your favorite. I was once again surprised, looking at him. Did he even know that? He continued choosing breakfast for us, poured tea for me. Don't be surprised. I know a lot of your little quirks. Want to hear more? I exclaimed, Roger, are you normal? Are you prying into your subordinate's privacy all the time? Roger frowned. Am I your subordinate? Your tone sounds like I'm your uncle. I laughed. Okay, nephew. I've been wanting to ask you a question. He poured some tea. What's up? I nervously asked. Roger, why did you always scold me before? He sipped his tea. I treated you like the manager, grooming you. Hatred for not turning good steel into iron. I almost choked on my tea. What logic was this guy following? He put down the cup, cleared his throat, and said, I have a question for you. Avoiding his gaze, I sipped my tea and whispered, go ahead. He extended his slender fingers, lightly tapping the table near me, and looked up at me. Only after I looked up did he continue. What did you mean when you called me blind that day? I whispered even softer, I don't know, but I just felt upset when I saw you leave. He nodded slowly, a smile playing at the corners of his eyes as if he had discovered a big secret. One last question, he said, and my heart skipped a beat at his words. Susan, what do you think of the blind date my mom arranged for me? I replied, my mom said she arranged 7 dates for me, so I have to compare you with the other 6 before I know. He squinted at me. I quickly added, but if you agree to a condition, I won't need to go on the other dates. Raising an eyebrow, he asked, what's the condition? I said, let me publicly scold you in front of the whole company. He chuckled and said, well, as my girlfriend, that could work. I was ecstatic, and so, my chance for revenge was about to come.